Welcome, dear students, to Diploma in Pre-Primary and Junior Primary Education, Mother Tongue Literacy Development 3. This is our contact-based session, and I'll be your tutor for the semester. I am Mrs. Shara Kavihuha. Good. To move on, I would like to welcome you to this very important module, which is literacy development, and it's a very important subject for many junior primary teachers, as this forms the basis for reading. And as we all know, reading is very important to pathway for learning throughout a child's school as well as for tertiary preparation. The purpose of this module is to develop a theoretical understanding of mother tongue and second language development amongst our junior and pre-primary learners. Oops. To move on, we're going to look at the presentation in details. This presentation, firstly, provide assistance to all the 3 examination papers for 2018. All examination papers are combined for the 2 courses, the DPPE and the DJPE. As the content of the 2 study guides differs a lot, this was not easy to come up with one concrete focus in terms of the assignments and examination questions. I therefore had to make use of choice questions where I could not find enough similar content in both of the study guides. So when you, as the teacher, is going to answer the question, there will be choice questions. So you must answer based on your study guide, if it's DPPE or DJPE. So when answering a choice question in your examination paper, you must choose the part of the question that occurs in your specific study guide and only answer that one. Don't attempt the one that you have not prepared yourself on. Furthermore, I just have a brief welcome remarks for all of you, dear students. Although the module is written and studied in English, all aspects that will be discussed are equally applicable to mother tongue instruction, and you will respond to the examination and assignment in English. But when you teach mother tongue instruction, you will have to apply the knowledge you gain through the English medium of instruction to mother tongue teaching. First thing that I'll take you through as preparation for the 3 examination papers will be children's literature's purpose and format. Children's literature is very, very important as it motivates readers to think and it enhances language, and therefore children's literature is very important and must be considered by educators as it promotes cognitive development. Cognitive development in the sense that it provides the learners with the opportunity to respond to literature, and through this they develop their own opinions about the topic of discussion. This ultimately strengthens the cognitive development domain as it encourages deeper thought about literature, reading materials. Secondly, children's literature teaches the children to appreciate their own cultural heritage as well as those of others, knowing it very well that in Namibia we are living in a multicultural as well as multilingual society. Hence, children's literature should teach them to appreciate their own cultural heritage as well as those of others. Thirdly, children's literature, it helps children to develop emotional intelligence and creativity. This is fully covered on page 17, as stated in brackets. It is, in brief, to develop their emotional intelligence means their sensitivity to others around them and the environment that they are living within, as well as being creative in terms of relating what they know to others. Fourthly, children's literature is very important as it nurtures growth and development of the learners. This nurturing is in terms of personality and the social skills. Children's literature can help them develop into caring adults, intelligent and friendly people. As mentioned in number 3, since their emotional and intelligence creativity are also assisted through children's literature. Lastly, children's literature transmits important literature and themes from one generation to the other. Mainly the ones that we know of, good morals, such as taking care of one another, as well as consequences to every action. If you steal, this will happen. So children's literature is very important in that sense. To move on, it is imperative that you as the teacher have to select suitable reading text, suitable literature for pre-primary as well as junior primary learners or children. So how do we do this? You as a teacher need to consider the learner's physical, cognitive, language and moral developments. And do not forget that interest is very important. Thus, you should consider or ask yourself this question in red. Does the book provide an exciting journey into the world of discovery? Picture book stories are very important because most of the children can relate to what they see. They learn best when they see. Non-fiction picture books, yes, these books cover a wide range of topics. Some are non-fiction for the young learners, which provide help with solving problems, such as studying school, a divorce in a family, death in the family, as well as receiving of new siblings, etc. In addition to that, it is thus important for teachers of pre-primary as well as junior primary to consider the following factors when selecting books for their learners. First, is the author knowledgeable about the subject? Does the writer knows the subject of the story? Does the text keep your learner's interest by being clear and simple? This factor is very important to consider when selecting a book, because once they are bored, they will stop concentrating. So does the text keep your learner's interest by being clear and simple? Do the illustrations support the text? Illustrations such as the pictures, are they relating to the text at hand? If the text refers to Mary kicks the ball, is there a picture demonstrating or illustrating the ball being kicked? Does the subject matter hold interest for the learners? Interest is very important, as I've mentioned earlier. Young people tend to be distracted very easily, so you need to keep them focused through text and stories that are of interest to them. Are the books that you are selecting going to provide enjoyment, an overall positive experience, and teach them something along the way? So it does not have to be a story that is of interest to you as a teacher, but it has to be of interest to them and ultimately must provide a positive experience. It must teach them something. There must be a moral behind the story. And lastly, on the slide, will it get them asking appropriate questions, which is very, very important. It's a clear sign of somebody has understood something when the learners are able to ask questions based on a story that they have read or a book that was read to them. They must be able to ask. This also demonstrates that the book was of interest to them and this book was enjoyed. Now, you as the educated teacher, when selecting appropriate books, you need to ask yourself a few questions. I think it's even advisable to create a checklist for yourself with the following questions in order to determine if you have the right books for your pre-primary and your junior primary learners. Questions. 1. Will you be able to draw from it or transition into other activities? If that is a goal, and most of the times it is the goal, that after reading the short story or non-fiction or fiction book, they need to respond to short questions, reading comprehension, or come up with a role play. So it's very important that you ask yourself that question: will you be able to draw from it or transition into other activities? Secondly, does the book contain large, simple pictures free of distraction? Too many details confuse young people. So the book should contain large pictures for them to see them clearly, simple pictures for them to follow, concentration, and please free of distraction. Let it be sequential, one event leading to the other. Straight line development of ideas. Thirdly, are the pages easy to turn? Board books for toddlers or children who have a physical handicap allow learners who have not developed fine motor skills to successfully turn pages. So are the pages easy to turn? They should be easy to turn so that they do not distract the focus of this poor soul who could be handicapped or still have not developed fine motor skills. Furthermore, on selecting books, you further ask yourself, is the text written in a fast-moving plot with a positive closing? Because children's books often have a happy ever after ending. So you must consider the fact that the text is written in a fast-moving plot. and it ends off with a positive closing. We don't want to groom adults or young adults who are filled with immoral stories that start happy and end sad, where a parent dies, or the sad endings, but they should always close off happily ever after to motivate their reading so that they can be willing to read further. Will an adult enjoy the reading book? You as the teacher or the parent or guardian. Keep in mind that your attitude towards reading will influence the learners. So you selecting the book for the learners should also enjoy reading the book. You are not doing this for them, but you're doing it for you and them. So you must be interested in this. Positivity and interest will also fill the whole room, and everybody will have a positive attitude. Another question: does the book help learners to think about good values? Books for children should not preach or teach bad messages, but it should embrace good values that can be woven throughout in a subtle approach. Like I have said, make sure that the book helps the learners to think about good values, taking care of each other, appreciating their environment, and so forth. On selecting books, another question that you as the educator should ask yourself is the book free of all bias, including age, gender, and race, especially for our country, Namibia, that is multilingual and multicultural? Make sure that the books that you are selecting for your learners, for your reading class, are free of any bias. In terms of age, gender, they should not be mainly on females or mainly on males. It should not only be mainly on a specific race group, but it should accommodate all. What is the repetitive quality of the book? That is this book one that the learners will request to be read to them several times? A book that they will not get tired of, a book that they will always want to read or be read to, as it is free of bias, as it is of interest, as it is of positive attitude prevalent in it. Does the language contain rhyming words, funny characters, an interesting plot, and a surprise or predictable closing? It's also another very important question. Rhyming words are good, as this children that you are busy with, the pre-primary and junior primary, are still very young, so they are learning how to read, and it's always good if they can get some rhyming words, some funny characters to make them comfortable and interested in the story. Thus, the importance of an interesting plot and also a surprising closing that ends happily ever after. In addition to what we have just looked at, which was the purpose of literature, and we went on to look at how selecting the appropriate books, we are now going to look at ERICKSON'S theory. ERICKSON's theory is a very important theory, as it is based on the developmental model, which is a series of psychosocial crises. It focuses on the different stages individuals must successfully resolve as they are maturing. Of very prime importance in terms of ERICKSON'S theory in resolving conflicts are the adults who care for children and the interactions in which they are involved. Maturation occurs as each and every individual progresses from one stage to the next. As I have said in the beginning, ERICKSON'S theory is a developmental model of psychosocial crisis, which each and every individual must successfully resolve as they mature. Going back to your study guides, you will notice that there's a powerful table like the one I have here that demonstrates or illustrates the stages of ERICKSON'S theory, which every child or person has to go through. The first stage is known as infancy, followed by early childhood, middle childhood, and lastly, late childhood. Now, with each stage, there is an approximate age. The infancy stage is from birth to 18 months. Here, the crisis is on trust versus mistrust. At this point, the infant is developing trust. And this is where mainly they cling onto their parents or onto their toys. Everything is theirs because they have a crisis in terms of who to trust and who not to trust. Trust and mistrust. In early childhood, which is from 10 months to 3 years, the crisis is on autonomy versus doubt. Now here they are, all a little bit older. We call them toddlers. So they want to play around, but there's a little bit of doubt. And then we have the middle child with 3 to 6 initiative. They're now getting involved, engaged into various activities, but there's also a little bit of guilt. The guilt feeling in terms of, am I doing it right? You see how they will walk and touch things, but they're afraid of not doing it. So it's initiative. Yes, they want to do it, but somehow there's a guilty feeling. And then we have the late childhood, 7 to 11 years. The crisis at this stage is on industry versus inferiority. You as a teacher should make sure that the books that you are selecting and the activities are relevant to the stage of this child, and bearing in mind the crisis at which those children are at. So bear in mind that you are dealing with 3 to 6, or sometimes pre-primary, we start as early as 3 years. So these children are at the autonomy versus doubt stage, and then we have the initiative versus guilt, and lastly the industry versus inferiority. As you go through your study guides, please familiarize yourselves in details in terms of ERICKSON'S theory, the stages, the approximate age, and the crisis involved, and how to handle them. I will therefore move on to the reading methods. Reading methods are very important at this age of children, during the pre-primary as well as the junior primary. Therefore, teachers should decide on suitability of the method. Having read through reading methods are very important, and there is no one right method. This is one thing that we as educators should bear in mind. So it is very important to know the different methods, but do not just rely on one. Try to take a bit and bits from each one and incorporate them in your lessons. Or based on each lesson of presentation in terms of reading or writing, then you find the suitable method. Methods may be combined, as I have said, or used alone, determined or depending on the presentation of the day. Teachers should be creative when teaching reading, because reading is very, very important. Once a child fails to understand, everything will fall apart. So teachers must be creative when teaching reading. Therefore, they need to acquire themselves. You must familiarize yourself with the 4 main methods: the phonics method, the look and say method, language experience, and lastly, the context support method. Those are the 4 main reading methods that we're going to look at. The phonics method. Phonics method is so far known as the best method in teaching reading. Learners should be taught the alphabet first during the phonics method. They are introduced to the alphabets, and then they learn the alphabet letters and their sounds. Thus, they rely on the knowledge of the alphabet and learn to blend them. Then, the knowledge is applied to both familiar and unfamiliar words. This method, being the best method known to teach reading, could also be boring. As I have said, the method is very important that first you teach the learners the alphabet, and then you teach them the alphabet letters and their sounds. A is a letter, the sound is A. And then once they have the letters and the sounds, then they can rely on this knowledge of the alphabet and learn to blend them. So they take K, T, and then they form a word, cat. Knowledge applied to both familiar and unfamiliar words, and they are able to read. The look and say method, also known as the whole language approach. During this method, it's straightforward. It speaks for itself. Look and say. The teacher's recognition of whole words or sentences. You as the teacher, you teach the recognition of a whole word or sentence. The learners say the words after the teacher. Look and say. So they see the word and then they say it. There is a use of flashcards with individual words written on them to accompany the words so that at least they can look and then say the word. Cat, and there's a picture of a cat, and then the children repeat after the teacher, cat. It is also known as not a good method because without pictures, this method fails. The learners rely on recognition of whole words or sentences by looking at the word and then they say it. Learners make wild guesses if there are no pictures. And through this, you as a teacher, you are only encouraging rote learning. We call it memorizing. So they only know that when they see a picture of a cat, then they read it as cat. The language experience is the third reading method. During this method, learners uses their own words to help them learn to read. Learners draw pictures. The teacher writes underneath the learner's drawings. So the learner draws a tree, teacher writes beneath the picture, tree. Then compile the pictures into a book for the learners to read again and again. This method supports concept development and vocabulary, yes, which is a good element. And the last one is called the context support method. During the context support method, the teachers select books that interest the learners. The teacher considers gender interest in terms of which books are of interest to boys and which ones are of interest to girls. Books with learners' interest encourages enthusiasm. Thus, it's very important for the teacher to consider the gender of both boys and girls. The context support method is used with long and short sentences, or sometimes combine both. Now that we have done going through the reading methods as fully covered in your study guides, go back and familiarize yourself. Make sure you have a clear understanding. We are moving to the strategies that improve readers' comprehension. Comprehension strategies are thinking tools, mental actions, or routines that are used before, during, or after reading a text. Activating prior knowledge, relating personal experience, or predicting what will happen in a text. We are looking at strategies that improve readers' comprehension, meaning understanding of a text. This can be done through asking questions while you are reading, visualizing or painting a picture in your mind. To visualize is to paint a picture in your mind of what is being read to you. Monitoring, very important, checking for understanding while reading. Drawing inferences, meaning you're trying to draw conclusions. And then lastly, summarizing or retelling of the text or the story you have read. The focus is on strategies that improve readers' comprehension, understanding of the text. So what do you do first? You activate your prior knowledge, meaning relate personal experience or predict what will happen in the text. How do you do this? By asking questions while you are reading, visualizing, painting a picture based on what you are reading, and very important, monitoring for understanding while reading, and lastly, drawing inferences, meanings from the text, and thus summarize and retell the story. We are now moving on to writing a good summary. Summary writing is very important, as you have observed with the previous slide, where we looked at readers' comprehension of text, that at the end of the comprehension process, you must see to it that you are able to summarize or retell the story. To retell is to summarize because you're doing it in brief. Therefore, a good summary is an abridged presentation of the actual material, meaning it is very short. It is very short. It covers the title, the author's name, the type of text, and the central concept are written in the beginning. It is a summary. A summary is an abridged presentation of the actual material. Reading on page 36 to 37 of the DJPE, the Diploma in Junior Primary, it is clearly elaborated on how to write a good summary. I have highlighted the tips. The first one, the title, the author, the text, and the central concept, followed by sentences that should be arranged in a valid, progressing manner. Your summary should be very brief, therefore exclude any personal interpretation or evaluation. You are only summarizing, rounding off the main ideas of the presentation, not repeating what the author has said. Your summary should make use of the present tense or historical present. Very important to note that with this point, we mean that do not change the tense of the summary. You are not owning this information in terms of changing everything, but you are owning it by making it shorter and only focusing on the main points, the central concept. The summary should be shorter than the original text, and the summary version should contain all important conclusions, meaning the main ideas. Moving on to oral reading fluency. We have looked at comprehension, we have looked at reading methods, we have now looked at summarizing. We are now currently looking at oral reading fluency. Fluency is very important. Oral reading fluency is developed in children through modeling. Reading to learners allow them to hear the sound, the rhythm, and phrasing of language. Modeling means they have to follow you, repeat, imitate what the teacher is doing. And if we really want oral fluency amongst our learners, we need to read to them with clear sound, rhythm, and phrasing of language. Vocabulary development. Oral reading fluency. Since fluency depends upon the reader's ability to quickly recognize and decode words on sight, having a solid vocabulary foundation and a bank of sight words to draw upon is very important. Choral reading. Now, choral reading has to do with reading together, reading aloud. Choral comes from choir. Reading along out loud with a learner and following along in a text together allows the teacher to help learners experience hearing and sounding out words at the same time. It is very important for oral reading fluency during the choral reading phase or practice where you are reading aloud. It's good to determine the learners that fail to read fluently, to determine those that are memorizing. So it's a good approach for oral reading fluency, the choral reading. Through that, when you are reading together, you can pick up the pronunciation, the spelling of words as you can hear them from the learners and improve on them. Modeling is very important. You are reading to them and then they follow after you. Vocabulary development becomes essential because they are learning new words. They will have a bank of sight words to draw upon when reading. Oral reading fluency continues through the use of SSR. This is known as the silent sustained reading. Through the silent sustained reading, learners get the freedom to develop their own taste for reading, unfettered by the pressures and anxieties of reading aloud. Because some of the learners are very shy, and some of the learners are slow. Yep, there are those who have slow readers, and some of those learners who are fast, they take over the show because they want to show off their skills. So through the silent sustained reading approach, it becomes beneficial because there's no pressure and anxiety on reading aloud for those who are slow readers or poor readers. SSR both increases motivation and ability to focus because now you are dealing with an individual. Guided oral reading is another one. This approach allows learners to apply and build their phonics skills, to sound out words and help them crack the alphabetic code. Very, very important. It allows learners to apply and build their phonics skills. As we have said, the phonics method is known as the best method of reading, where learners are first introduced to the alphabet letters and their sounds. Then they blend them, and finally they are able to read any familiar or unfamiliar word. So just what we are referring to. Through their phonics skills, they are able to sound out words, and this will help them develop or break the crack of the alphabetic code. Another very important one is called repetitive oral reading. Anything repeated becomes very, very, very positive because it is, let me put it as, once it has been repeated, it becomes part of your vocabulary or part of your living, because they will need, the more they are read to, the easier it comes for them, because these learners increase their familiarity with vocabulary and pronunciation of words. They hear these words every day, such as come, go, eat, sit, write, explain, speak, jump, etc. This increases vocabulary and pronunciation. So repetitive oral reading help learners increase their familiarity with words, and these also assist with reading fluency. As today you pronounce the word wrong, tomorrow you pronounce the word wrong, and the day after tomorrow it finally improves. Fluency has been improved. Context clue is another approach in terms of reading. During the contextual clues, readers use hints in the text to get an idea about the meaning of an unfamiliar word. These hints are called context clues. As the learner is reading, going through an article or a text, they may come across a lot of unfamiliar words. Let them not fear, but make use of what we call the contextual clue. To look at the word that precedes, that comes before the unfamiliar word, or the word that follows the unfamiliar word. Through that, they can detect or guess the meaning of the word. That is exactly what context clue refers to. Context clues allow readers to cross-check their identification of words. The reader should always cross-check to be sure that the word makes sense in terms of syntactic and semantic clues. Looking at syntactic and semantic clues, those are the three different types of context clues that one can use. Bear in mind that context clues allow readers to cross-check their identification of words. Context clues are used by readers in a given text to get an idea about the meaning of an unfamiliar word or an unfamiliar word. Semantic or meaning clues. Semantic means meaning. Syntactic or word clues. Syntactic has to do with word order. Word structure clue is also another approach. Groups of letters that occur frequently in words consist of prefixes or suffixes. Prefixes at the beginning, suffix at the end. And we have what we also know as inflectional ending. Like the example I have in brackets for you. Uncommon, commonly, and commenting. Prefix, suffix, and inflectional ending. This has to do with word structure clues, which are groups of letters that occur frequently in words. This is very important for you as the teacher to familiarize your learners, teach them in terms of this structure clues, the use of prefix, suffix, inflection, and derivational morphology. Very important, you need to point it out to your learners. Teach them the use of group of letters. If the learners are able to associate sounds with a cluster of letters, it leads to more rapid, efficient word identification. It becomes easy. The word itself is just common, but then we attach a prefix "un," the word becomes uncommon. The word common may be inflected with a suffix "ly," the word becomes commonly, or sometimes inflectional, ending with "ing." So this is exactly what we mean with the fourth bullet point that says, being able to associate sounds with a cluster of letters leads to more rapid, efficient word identification. Another clue is known as analogy clues. Analogy clue, a reader builds an increasing store of words that they can recognize with little effort. They use the words they know to help them recognize words that are unfamiliar. The word clues is just an idea. So you can use context clue through the use of syntactic or semantic, if not word structure or analogy clues. Example I have for you there, wheel and feel, cut or put. Words they know to help them recognize words they are unfamiliar with. In addition to our presentation, we are looking at how to develop learners' introduction, middle, and closure writing skills. Learners should be able to write a topic sentence, sketch out ideas, reasons, give details and examples, and be able to draft. After drafting, reread and make corrections. Through that, it's called their editing. They check for transitional words, capital letters, punctuation, and spelling. Followed by a revision, you revise, state on the topic, and have a concluding statement. Proofreading and provide a final copy. Very important, you as the teacher must develop the learner's introduction, middle, and closing writing skills. How do you do this? As mentioned, they must be able to write a topic sentence, introduce them to the main idea. They sketch out the ideas, the purpose of their writing, then they give details and examples known as the supporting sentences, and through that they start to draft a text or an essay. They reread to make corrections in terms of their writing. They edit to check for transitional words. Transitional words are the conjunctions, the use of capital letters, and very important, the punctuations, the road signs of any text, and spelling. Lastly, they revise to make sure that they are still staying on their topic and they have concluded the topic. Then they can proofread and provide a final copy for assessment. Very important, they must not be introduced to letter writing and emails, depending on their age group, the level where they are. Pencil grip is a very important one. Most of us have failed to be taken through this. Now our children are very fortunate to have you prepare them on pencil grip in order to produce learners that have wonderful handwritings. The ideal pencil grip is with a thumb, index and middle fingers holding the pencil. As I have said, most of us were not introduced to this technique. But now, as a diploma or junior diploma primary teacher, please assist the learners in terms of pencil grip. Those three fingers can move freely during writing because the ring and the little finger are curled gently into the palm, giving the hand stability. Once they have a good grip of pencil, introduce them to classroom practices for early writing skills. It's very important that they know how to hold a pencil. There are a lot of exercises in the study guide on how you can prepare the learners on pencil grip. Once this is in place, then you move on to classroom practices for early writing skills. Make sure that your class is well stocked with a writing center that has a variety of paper and writing tools, other materials that support writing development, computer usage, art center, a rich writing materials room, because the purpose is to provide classroom practice for early writing skills. So the classroom must have a well-stocked writing center with a variety of paper and writing tools, crayons, pencils, pens if they do make use of them, and other materials that support the writing development such as rulers, computer usage, an art center for some lovely pictures, and a rich writing material environment in order to practice their writing skills at an early stage. There are ways children learn word meanings indirectly. It is also another important aspect for DPPE and DJPE teachers. Familiarize yourselves through your study guides on different ways children learn word meanings indirectly. They are learning word meanings indirectly. They should engage daily in oral language, communicate a lot with each other. They should listen when adults read to them. They read extensively on their own. It's another way that children learn word meanings indirectly through daily oral language, as well as listening to adults and reading extensively. Another component that I'm highlighting in preparation of your study guides and the exams, the 3 exams, is on mother tongue written materials that can be used for developing your own and learners' writing skills. You as the teacher must get as many storybooks and teaching aids in the mother tongue. You must compile your own storybooks from stories which the children tell in class, because you are busy to develop mother tongue written materials that can be used for your learners' writing skills. Thirdly, write these stories down and compile a storybook. It's so interesting for the learners to read their own stories. It motivates them, and through that, they are improving their reading and writing skills. On this slide, we are looking at the purpose of assessment. We have just looked at mother tongue written materials that can be used for developing your own and learners' writing skills, whereby you as a teacher need to get many storybooks and teaching aids in the mother tongue. You compile your own stories from the stories with the children tell in class, and then write these stories down, then compile a storybook that they all are going to share in class. Having that in mind, then you need to assess them. You need to assess them. On this slide, we are looking at the purpose of assessment. Assessment is very important because you gain reliable and valid information of the learner's performance in the different competencies. Competencies are the ones that we have just looked at. The reading, oral fluency reading skills, reading comprehension, and now the writing skills, where they're able to pencil grip, hold the pencil correctly, write stories of their own. Purpose of assessment is that it is used to give feedback to learners about their strengths and weaknesses within the different competencies, which is a very important aspect. It also informs the parents about the progress of their children via report cards. Assessment is very important because the parents can monitor the progress of their children at that given school or in that classroom. Assessment also helps you as the teacher improve your teaching skills. And this takes us back to what we looked at, the teaching methods. Perhaps you were teaching reading through the look and say method. And based on the assessment that you have used, you realize that the method was not applicable, and now you need to change to the phonics method. So the purpose of assessment is to help teachers improve their teaching as well. We have two types of assessment. One is known as the formal assessment, and the other one is the informal assessment. Formal assessment use formal reading or oral tests that can only assess a limited range of competencies, and therefore should not take up a great deal of time, because formal assessment are mainly done at the end of the task. Complete one aspect, one competency. We are done with reading, and now we're going to have a formal assessment to determine their understanding of reading. It assesses a limited range, not the whole competencies. It takes place at the end of the semester or at the end of the competencies covered. It is very important that teachers arrange, meaning organize and plan, in order to assess the learners and give them marks at the end of the competency, the task at hand, to have an overall understanding of the learners in terms of that competencies. This involves setting up assessment such as quizzes, short tests, oral tests, and worksheets. Formal, it's at the end of the written assessment or competencies. Whereas the informal assessment is a continuous assessment. It assesses how well each learner has mastered the competencies described in the syllabus. This is ongoing. It is done through observation of each learner's progress in learning and practice situations while they are busy investigating, interpreting phenomena and data, while they are busy applying knowledge, communicating, and making value judgments, and in their participation in general. So informal assessment takes place every day, not once off at the end of the semester or at the end of the competency being assessed. Like informal assessment. Informal assessment is continuously done through observation as well as interpreting or investigation of activities in class. It is assessed during lessons, and marks are allocated continuously just to determine the understanding of the activity they are busy on with at that moment. In the end of my presentation, I will round off by emphasizing on a very important aspect, that please go back to your study guide, consider the verbs, thinking processes in the guide. It's very, very important. Verbs, thinking processes in the study guide. These are the keywords known as explanation, analyzing, describing. Familiarize yourself with the thinking processes in the study guide. It will make your examination easy, as you will be able to tackle any question given to you once you know the verbs at hand. If the question is explain, you know what explain stands for. The question is define, you know that define is not to explain, and to explain is not to describe. Please familiarize yourselves with that. And lastly, I would like to remind you that education is the greatest equalizer, and please, no crisis can ever alter the worth of what you know. Therefore, strive for knowledge. I thank you.